Dr. Newton. Oh my word. That's a goal. You're both on there?
Oh my. Have a great picture.
I did the same thing, like, I got So, all right, everyone, let's get started. Sorry. I know lots of familiar faces. It's great. So, Celine asked me to introduce our speaker today. He's on travel in Brazil to COP. So, here we go. Our speaker for the series is Dr. Nancy Targett. Some of you know Nancy. I've known Nancy for a while. Some of you don't know Nancy, and that's all right. I thought I could wing it and memorize everything, but she's done so much that I'm gonna have to use a cheat sheet. Nancy got her PhD from the University of Maine quite some moons ago.
Some years ago.
Before that, you were Pitt and Miami, is that
That's
right?
correct, yeah.
After getting a PhD, she stayed on as a research and teaching assistant at the University of Maine for 5 years, and then got a faculty position at Skagway. Skagway Institute,
yeah.
And stayed there 5 years.
Yeah, about 3.
And then 3.
Yeah.
So I really need my notes.
That's
And then joined the College of Marine Studies. And I was in 84, I guess.
That's right.
Then
That's
College
right.
of Marine Studies. And spent many years at UD. During her time here, she served as program director for a marine biology and biochemistry program from 90 to 94. Associate Dean for the College of Marine Studies from 96 to 2001. Dean of the College of Marine Studies and Earth, Ocean and Environment, 2005 to 2015. Also director of the Sea Grant program during that time. And acting president from 2015 to 2016. During her time here, she also led the group that formed the first state Marine with and served on the board of directors of that for 6 years. So, as you know, or as you will find out, she, during her time here, expanded the footprint of the portfolio of the Graduate College of Marine Studies to become the College of Earth, Ocean and Environment. As acting president, she fostered campus-wide innovation ecosystem and expanded entrepreneurship and public-private partnership at the institution. She received the Order of the First State from the Governor Markell in recognition of her contribution to the state of Maine. In 2016, she moved to the University of New Hampshire, where she served as provost and vice president for academic affairs. And there she promoted the university relationship with external partners and focused on initiative related to recruiting and retaining students and preparing them to enter the workforce. At the national level, during her career, she served as the chair of the board of trustees of the Consortium for Ocean Leadership, CEOE, the Washington-based, DC-based group aimed at advancing ocean research and technology and advocating for it. She's held multiple elected positions at the national level, National Sea Grant Program, and served on several National Academy of Sciences panels. She also chaired several fisheries committees during her federal appointment at the Mid-Atlantic Fisheries Management Council. She currently has a federal appointment at the National Sea Grant Advisory Board and is an executive search consultant for the ABG search firm. So as you can probably tell by now, Nancy has a vast and unique experience in higher ed that spans several decades, building coalitions, supporting student success, and serving to support the advancement of science at the national level. So I know that she's going to talk about her time at UD here, and I hope that in sharing your experience and your perspective, on the trajectory that has led us here. Maybe we can also gain some insight on how to navigate the current moment in higher ed and science. So thank you. Looking forward to it.
Not too tall to order, right? Tell you how nice it is to be back. I haven't been back on campus for quite a while, so I'm really pleased to be here. I'm also pleased to be here celebrating with you on your 100th anniversary, 100-year anniversary seminar series. So that's really wonderful. And thanks and welcome to all the people that are on Zoom as well. And so, yes, Salim asked me to talk about the transition from CMS, College of Marine Studies, to CEOE. Hence the name, becoming CEOE, and then focusing on geography's role in the birthing of that college. And so what I want to do today is sort of talk about things in three ways, three bins, I guess. The first one is going to be to put a little bit of national perspective around what led to this transition that was going to occur. The second one is to take you through the process here at UD and some of the drama that happened around that. And then lastly, I'm going to do some musings about today and where we are today and offer some thoughts for consideration. Okay. So, if we could go to the next, some of you might know that when I read a book, I like to read the first 50 pages, then I go and read the end. And then I come back and I like to look at the way the process went. So the way I'm going to start today is we're going to consider this little intro I just did, the first 50 pages, and now we're going to jump to the end. And the end, or the penultimate, not quite the end, is the resolution that geography did that really did help get this college launched and off the ground. So a couple things I want to put, the resolution is on two different slides, and I just want to call to your attention some things that were mentioned in that resolution. The first thing is they talk about the university's path to prominence. Remember, Pat Harker was here. That was the name of the strategic plan. One of the very important parts of that was the Initiative for the Planet. And this college that we collectively had envisioned, and now with geography on board, was going to be a really important academic component to that. The second whereas really talks about geography's long tradition, 100-year tradition now, and its focus on both the importance of physical geography and human geography, and that interaction in an environment going from scales that go from local to global. Next, please. Then the next whereas talked about the holistic approach, and again, that emphasis on both physical and human geography. And we'll come back to that as part of the drama a little bit later. And finally, the idea, geography was putting themselves out here. We had been in discussions that there would be an equal commitment to change. They weren't just going to come into this college that was marine studies, was now marine and earth studies at that point. But in fact, there was going to be an equal commitment to change. It was going to be a reimagine college, and therefore be it resolved, and that they were excited to join with the College of Marine and Earth Studies to become the College of Earth, Ocean, and Environment. So with that, you now know the end. We're done. No, not really. So what I want to do then next, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and, if you don't mind, I'm going to take that.
Okay.
So the year is 2005. I have been appointed dean of the college, and that is sort of the start of the transition. And so what I want to talk about is what was happening on the national front. Did I hit the wrong? Oh, it's a.
You said next. There you go.
Oh, thanks.
Mhm.
It sort of started with geology. I was going to give a seminar at R1 University, and this particular one I'm not going to name, but I was going to give a seminar at an R1 University, and I was on their campus the day that they were going to dissolve and eliminate their Department of Geology. I found it really sobering, right? I thought, how can that be? How can this be happening at a really well-known, well-established university? And so that caused me some consternation about this, but there was a lot of this faculty angst, administrative angst across the country, not just at this institution, but a lot of them. And it was all around sort of environmentally aligned programs, not because they didn't agree with them, but because in the case of geology, there had been a big slump in the oil industry. A lot of the graduates were coming out. And so some people who didn't understand the breadth of what geology was all about thought, well, what we need to do during this slump is just to eliminate the programs. I found that very sobering. If they weren't eliminating them, then they were going to be reimagining them. And that's what they did at the Arizona State University. At Arizona State University, that Department of Geology was in 2005 a department. And their new president, Michael Crow, who, as you know, has reinvented the new American University, he said, I want you to think bigger. I want you to come up and reinvent yourselves. And so they did. They reinvented themselves as a school of Earth and Space Exploration. They call them CC, there, SESE. And you can see astronomy, astrophysics, earth and environmental sciences, science education, systems engineering, all of this got folded into what is now one of their most wildly successful programs at Arizona State University. 20 years on, wildly successful. Had they stayed in that Department of Geology in this particular case, it never would have happened quite this way. Wildly successful, not only in terms of research grants that they're bringing in, but also in terms of student numbers and the way they deliver their programming. And the other example I just wanted to give you before we go back and get to the UD situation is the University of Washington. And they took a really holistic approach. They said, and of course, I was really familiar with them from their marine program, their ocean science program. I used to refer to them as one of the original Fab Four, right? There was Miami, there was Huey, there was Scripps, and there was UW, so the four corners. And they had a dean come in and the administration wanted to form a college of the environment. And in that particular case, that meant bringing in the ocean sciences, it meant bringing in the earth and atmospheric sciences, all kinds of groups and centers together. The marine people, the ocean people, thought that the college was still formed and they eventually were subsumed into it, but didn't have any say in how the college was formed. So all of that was sort of resonating in my head as I was thinking about this and coming back to us here in 2005 and the start of this transition to CMS. So, or to CEOE. So let me see, I want to talk about, okay, so this is what we had to start with, right? This is just these individual groups. And you know, these slides, I pulled from slides. Some of you will recognize these slides from way back, right? Because these are the branding, et cetera, of the time, right? So Paul Dummigan helped me get onto a computer that I had long since lost my password to and was able to pull this stuff off. So that was great. So there was my little footprints that I was showing to the provost and to all the faculty, et cetera, to say that we really needed to think about being a little bit bigger unit and how we could, and I thought it would not only be good for all of the environmentally aligned programs, particularly geology and geography, environmental science, which was under geography, and for the marine programs, but I would have thought even broader than that. But this is where we ended up with here, and this was our start. Okay, so what I'm gonna actually, can I back up? Can you back up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. You got it?
No, you do it, if you would, please.
Yeah.
Back to the,
No worries.
all right, so Dan Rich is provost, I come in as dean, and Dan says to me, you know, I really think that geology should become a part of the College of Marine Studies. And they had a big coastal ocean program. I thought this was a good idea. And so he and I talked about it, and I said, but you know, we tried this before. When Carolyn Thorogood was dean, she and John Waymiller talked about it. John thought that was a great idea. Why, let's. The rest of the geology faculty did not think it was such a great idea. And so it never got off the ground. And when you think about it, I can actually understand that because CMS was a graduate only college, very research intensive, undergraduate courses, but no undergraduate degrees. Then here you had geology that was teaching, had a lot of undergraduate degrees, also did research and teaching a lot of service courses. The match wasn't there initially to begin with. But Dan felt it was really important, and he met with Jim Pizzuto, who was then the chair, and me, and said, look, I want this to happen. And geology, if you decide you're going to stay in arts and sciences, you're not going to grow. Okay, and that was the spark we needed to really get those discussions going in earnest, okay? So we had a lot of discussions then about this, and eventually geology and decided to come on board, and I guess we can go to that other one now.
Sure.
And start to take the first step in the transition. So this first step in the transition, as we had this discussion, was we made very minor changes in the organizational structure. The department came in, the 4 programs in the Marine College stayed the same. Everybody was reported up to the dean, and very, very minor programs. The biggest change, one of the big changes we made is we hired an assistant dean for student services who is sitting here, Frank Newton. Yeah. And Frank's job was to make sure that we took care of our students. And I think we did that in spades in terms of inspiring the students. And we worked on a strategic plan to develop this joint vision. And all the time that geology and marine studies are talking and moving forward with this formation of CMES, I'm still talking to geography. Now, I was convinced that geography would be an awesome department to have come into the college, all right? And so I approached, Brian Hansen was the chair at the time, and I approached him about it. He was pretty skeptical, I think, but he did say, Nancy, you can come in and talk to the faculty. So I did. And I went in and I was sure I had just a great message to give to everybody. And I really got my head handed to me on a platter. I still have PTSD to this day. I particularly remember Peter Reese, very articulate about it and very well defined his comments where he said basically no way, no how. And what they were worried about is here was this college that they felt was a science college, and here they are as a department. And they felt that physical geography and human geography were co-equal partners. And how is that going to work? And I pointed out to them that, in fact, CMS was the College of Marine Studies, not the College of Marine Science, because we, in fact, have policy, we have economics, a variety of other fields that would dovetail in or relate. The idea is it wasn't just a science college. Didn't matter. No way, no how. And so I left there feeling deflated, but undeterred. And I think I remember saying something to Dell at that point, and I said, well, I just have to articulate it better and help people see the vision of what could be. Went back to Dan Rich. Dan said, you have to convince Tom Apple, who was the Dean of Arts and Science. I mean, it just keeps going on and on. So meanwhile, we're moving ahead with CMES. CMES is formed. CMES forms. The strategic plan is approved by everybody a month before geography's resolution is done, before we sort of got you guys on board and decided to come. So we had CMES as an intermediate step, right? If geography had decided to come aboard right away, we would have skipped that intermediate step. In hindsight, I think it's probably not a bad thing that we had the intermediate step, because what it did is all of the fears that geology initially had and that we had talked through, none of them materialized. And the folks in geography could also see that hadn't happened. So I think that helped too. But when the time came for all of this, let me just backtrack 1 second and say that when this all started out, we needed to have a vote from CMS initially to say, if you don't have the faculty backing, nothing's going to proceed, right? So when Dan and I started talking about geology coming on board, even before we went to geology, we went to the CMS faculty and we laid it out. And I sort of explained that there were entities on campus that viewed us as a boutique, and that while we had the support of Presidents Trabant and Roselle, being viewed as a boutique college as CMS, College of Marine Studies, probably wasn't a good thing, and that it would be good for UD and the college to have a broader footprint. But we needed their vote on it. And it is a point of pride. Some of you have heard me say that we had a unanimous vote of the faculty. When do you ever get a unanimous vote of the faculty that day to explore moving forward? And that's how that started. And one of the people who ended up being really important in all of that was Gerard Mangon, who was a senior statesman with the college. And just as we were about to call for a floor vote, he raised his hand. I had no idea what he was going to say. Got up and he said this was just eloquent and uplifting and we got the vote that we needed. A similar thing happened in geography. Again, a senior statesman, Russ Mathers. And Russ waxed very philosophical as the faculty were discussing all of this. And I think was pivotal to getting to the resolution that moved us to the college. So those are sort of the kinds of things that happen. So now let's go. So this is what it looked like. This was until 2000, until FY06. Okay, you had marine studies, graduate college. At that time, there was one other graduate college at the University of Delaware, and it was Urban Affairs and Public Policy. Remember that? Yeah. Okay, and then graduate, so very different. Marine biology, biochemistry, that was the one I was program director of. That they changed their name after a while to marine bioscience, which was a broader name. I think that was good. And then we became the College of Marine and Earth Studies. The Department of Geological Sciences came in, and then all of the programs still reported. So we talked about that before. Okay. We also took the Delaware Geological Survey in. We already had Delaware Sea Grant, and SCORE which is an ocean secretariat, was also part of us. Okay. So that was the, so it became 4 programs in a department, now 42 faculty, 132 graduate students. And a lot of our expenditures still remain to be research expenditures. Okay, so then, as I said before, it was in October of 2008 that the CME strategic plan went live. And in November of 2008, Geography said, you know what, we think we'd like to come aboard and we'd like to reimagine the college. And so then in December, the college then had to vote. And they did. They put a resolution forward to say, yes, we want to move ahead with this, and we'll do that. And then everything else started to trickle down from there. So we had transition teams, joint faculty meetings, et cetera. And of course, it all had to go through faculty senate and the trustees. So academic affairs committee of the trustees and the trustees itself. So ultimately, the new college went live on July 1 of 2009. Okay, let me see here. All right, you're not expected to read this. This is just the resolution. The biggest thing here was what I put, it's the last paragraph that I made larger, I enlarged. And it was that we enthusiastically, as both the Department of Geological Sciences and the Marine program, the College of Marine and Earth Studies enthusiastically endorses the move that includes to a college that includes the geography department and us, okay? And so, the path forward was a little bit more formal this time. We identified a transition team. Dan Leathers, you were the co-chair of that transition team, along with Chuck Epifanio. I don't know if you remember that. And the idea was that, or how can you forget it? Right?
PTSD.
So we have the transition team, and these folks were tasked with a couple of things. Let's really rethink the organization of the college. All right. Do we really want to have 4 programs, 2 departments, and then how do we want to be organized? So they did that. How do we want to be governed? And that was pretty straightforward. And then finally, the college name. And we wanted to make sure there were 25 names that were submitted for the new college. You couldn't think that there would be that many variations on a theme, but there were. And then, of course, there were the curricular issues that we dealt with later. Designated deputy dean, who ended up being, Dan Leathers. So, yeah. And then we also set up a committee that was going to interface with Denon, which was also being formed at the same time. Okay. So, all right, there's your transition team. Again, pulling some of these slides. So these are just ball and stick diagrams that put together. So here we are. There's geography and the environmental science program, because environmental studies didn't exist yet, right? And then the school, and now the new thing is to make marine science and policy a school. So they put a director of a school. Why a school? Because the feeling was you've got physical oceanography, chemical oceanography, marine policy, and the biology sectors. That's pretty interdisciplinary. Let's put it in a school rather than a department. So it was just an uber department, I guess, that recognized all those things. So that's the formation of the new goal. So now it was all these different being there. I just get to use my big Sasquatch, right, to say that now we had a much bigger footprint as an aggregated group. Okay, so the idea was that we felt the college would better align some of these units at the university and therefore just give us more visibility as a whole. More faculty, more graduate students, and now undergraduate students. And this would only then grow because we were bringing in here the geography students that included environmental science students. We have the geology students in here. And we didn't at one point have any of the marine program students. So that was an undergraduate major that was added later. So that was only going to grow. Okay, and we had a footprint that was in quite a lot of places here on this main campus. 4 different buildings, as well as the interdisciplinary science and engineering building, Harker building, and also down in Lewis, okay? And I think even more importantly than that was the outreach that we had when we took and looked at where people were doing their work in this college. It literally was a global approach to things, right? All right. So let me just see where we are here. So just because we were finished with doing all of the college was formed, et cetera, what else do we need to do? We needed to start making some curricular changes, and those curricular changes involved an undergraduate marine studies. Yeah, and with a couple of different tracks now, I think. Yeah, so it involved that meteorology degree, and the environmental science, Del, you chaired a committee. We brought in an external expert to help us think about what we wanted environmental science or environmental studies to be at the University of Delaware. And there was a lot of thought put into that, and a report that came out of that resulted in environmental science and environmental studies, right, happening. So that was something that went forward. But again, a lot of these other things happening. The other thing is that I think I chaired, I don't think I did, I know I did. I chaired a committee that was composed of individuals from across the university. And the idea was I thought that if we could aggregate up all of the environmental things that were happening at UD and put it on a web portal, Frank, you remember this, we could put it on a web portal that was agnostic. It wasn't going to live on our homepage. It was going to live at the university level. But the idea was to make it easier for people who had an interest, students who wanted to find out, well, what's going on in environmental work at UD, they could come to this homepage and find out what academic offerings there were. I'm not sure that ever got launched. I think it was proposed, and I don't remember.
Sort of half launch.
Okay, well, okay. Yeah, okay. So the idea then was that we wanted to, and this is for everybody who was here then will remember this because I used to show this slide all the time. It was that we were going to inspire students with outstanding programming, and we wanted to inspire and transform people, really facilitate hands-on learning, and then foster innovative research. And that meant talking across disciplines and having lots of partnerships to maximize that opportunity, reaching out to industry, et cetera. And as many of you know, we were pretty successful at all of that. We developed a variety of meta themes here to help picture and develop this. Dios was a part of the environmental sort of technology meta theme that we were thinking about, and then there was the energy meta theme that some of the Willett Kempton's work and the wind turbine stuff. And anyway, there was lots of things. We did develop a lot of partnerships. I just pulled one slide out to show some of the things that had been happening there around partnerships with companies, with the state, with just a lot of different entities to grow those external partnerships. And then I did want to say that none of it would have been possible without, this is the early leadership team. So it started out with Dan Leathers as the deputy dean, but also our hire of Frank Newton, right?
I used to wear that outfit all the time.
Yeah. And really doing things that made a difference. We had all of these, we had Dean's List dinners, we did all these things that would that were aimed at lifting up and inspiring the students as well as working with the faculty. And then Mosin came on after that, and we worked upon a lot on other partnerships and collaboratory ideas that were to move things forward. And then now we're today. So now today you have your leaders, and this is the evolution of CEOE, I think, continues. And I think that's a really important component of all of this, to recognize that that happens. So, and hopefully, I believe that CEOE is positioned today so much. I believe we were at the head of the curve of all of this, positioning ourselves to think differently, to reach outside of comfort zones, to talk across disciplines, to position us to be where we are in the environment that we are in today. And let me see, what I want to do is just touch base, go now and touch base on, I'm going to do some musings about the future. And I guess keeping in mind, this is just this slide again, to keep in mind that this is the goals always. And I think this really hasn't changed. You still, across the board, you still want to offer outstanding programs. You still want to foster research and facilitate partnerships. And so we live in really challenging times right now. Research funding is uncertain. The future of research funding is uncertain. I know that there are frustrations in some of the graduate students and undergraduates that are in these arenas and wondering what's going to be out there for them, et cetera. And so as we all try to navigate these times, and it's not just that, on top of all of that, you have artificial intelligence coming in. People are making use of that. You have to be up on that, and that's going to inspire new modes of communication and new ways of learning. So we have to be up on all of that. And then in addition to that, you have the demographic cliff, and you have the fact that a lot of people have lost trust in higher education. And so how do we navigate all of that? And one of the things that I think is really important is always to be able to ask ourselves how we are doing in terms of, are we delivering what we need to be doing? Are we incorporating the new technology? Are we inspiring students and doing what we need to do in that particular realm? And I think it's really critical. So universities don't exist without students, okay? Student enrollment, I think, both at the undergraduate and graduate levels are really important. And I think it's the idea of not just plowing the same path, but thinking of new opportunities for students, reaching out to new demographics for students. You've all done some of this with some of the certificate programs that you've done. I actually think that the college, in being reorganized and structured this way, had to rethink what they were offering for degree programs. What do students need and want, and how can we deliver it in a way that's important? At the same time, back in the day when all of this was happening, I remember we switched from people remember when you went from the hard copy catalog to an online catalog. Oh my God, it's so quaint to think of that now, but oh my God, it was such a big deal at the time. And one of the things I remember was saying to people that it's really important we think about how students are getting their information. So if they're just scrolling through a page and they see just titles of things, what's going to cause them to click on that to learn what you're teaching? And so I was really trying to suggest to people that they think about giving a clever name to their courses. Don't have to change any content, don't have to change the way you teach it, but just you want to maximize the number of eyes that are on that opportunity to learn what that course is about. Art Trembanis did this with his course, Life's the Beach. That was Geology 101. It was the introductory course to geology. And he retitled it Life's a Beach. And the numbers in the course went up hugely because people started looking and saying, oh, this looks really interesting. He didn't change the descriptor at all, but finally getting eyes on it, because geography, geology, a lot of these are discovery majors, as we find out. So Art's also a very engaging instructor, so we don't want to take that away from him at all. During this time, I'm actually back and forth here just a second. The other thing I wanted to say is during this time, we have, well, maybe I won't do that at this point. Okay. Anyway, this is where we are. So I went ahead and I looked, this is the American Association of Geographers, and this is the top line is undergraduate degrees. It goes from 1986 to 2021, I think was the last update that I saw on this. I want you to just squint at this. We're not focused on this broadly. One of the challenges with geography and with geology and marine science for sure is that we're not in a neat discipline like chemistry is in a discipline, and that we sort of are aligned. It's sort of our fields and aligned fields. And so here is when they added cartography. Here's when they started adding other things that were aligned, and here it was spatial GIS stuff. Okay, and so what you can see is that has an impact. These are the numbers that are coming off of the iPad codes, I guess, for numbers. And if you squint at this, what you see is there's some variation, and it's been mostly flat or declining. And so what we want to, just a light decline, what we want to think about is what do we need to do to change things so that we can continue to inspire students who are going to come in and do the important work and the training that's going to be needed for our future world. And so student education is a really important part of it. Again, just sort of emphasizing that. And as we come to I think the conclusion here for my comments is to just really say how important it is as we're thinking. I found this slide. This is one of the slides that we had when we were thinking about creating CEOE. And we were asking ourselves to optimize, what do we do to optimize the path forward? How productive are we? Are we being productive in the right ways? What about our staffing? Is it correct staffing? What about how we're organized? CEOE, when it was formed, asked all of those questions and asked, are we ready for the future? And I would posit that those are all questions that are relevant to today as we're moving forward into the future, that we need to be continually asking ourselves how we're doing on this. Because I'm really proud of the fact that the faculty created CEOE were really willing to reach out of their comfort zones, were willing to be change agents and to think about how things could be, and then to create that step. So in my view, CEOE is already ahead of the curve in terms of having a mindset and a culture that allows people to think like that. So with that, I think I'm going to stop and say thank you.
Comments, questions? Please.
Frank?
I think too, if you expand on one of the things that I think also put us ahead of the curve, was that we were looking at collaborations with other colleges. When we started to put together environmental programs, we really started to look beyond, and it wasn't without fights and discussions, but to bring in the College of Agriculture and Natural Sciences to create joint doctoral programs with Jamin, like thinking outside of the sort of traditional ways that higher ed had been put together prior to that.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, so we did try to think about that and try to think about how you would bring in, I still believe that this is part of what will be the future for higher education is I do think we will start to draw, we might not have all the expertise here, but we might partner with another institution. So for example, with the one that comes to my mind, was with population dynamics, fisheries biology. There was somebody at school in Maryland that had that expertise. We didn't have that expertise, but they had the same kind of ITV system that we have, and we could do that kind of distance learning, and we could do those kind of partnerships, or with Shaman. I do think that that's something that will be an opportunity to continue to expand in the future. Certainly the technology is a lot easier now with just doing Zoom or something like that to make these things happen. So I do think that. So yeah, I think partnerships between institutions, with industry, just the whole gamut of partnerships is the name of the game moving this forward. I will also say that I don't know if anybody will remember this, but I did suggest, one of the things in the reorganization I suggested was that the geology and geography form a school called, Tracy remembers, called Earth Science and Society. That did not go over. But what it did do is get people thinking about name changes and how to present themselves. And so in that regard, I think it accomplished its goal. So,
Every 5 to 10 years that comes up in terms of us joining together, and it always kind of gets stopped on.
yeah.
About time to do it again.
Get your flak jacket.
So you have a question?
There's a question, Dana's put a question in the chat and then Kirk Miller as well.
And then Kirk,
So
yeah.
Dana's asking, when you look forward 10 to 20 years in the future, how do you think we'll need to change our programs to develop students for those future jobs?
Yeah, so there's always the tension between disciplinary depth and breadth, and I think that it is gonna be important to do both, right? You have to have your disciplinary depth, but you have to be able to cross across disciplines, and you have to be, it's gonna be even more expanded versions of people with different perspectives coming together to work in these big teams. So we're seeing this now. And I think we have to have, and hopefully we're training our students to be comfortable in that kind of arena, because I think that's what's going to be in the future. And they're gonna be comfortable with technology, they already are, but AI and all of the other and that we can't even envision right now that are coming down the road, we need to be ready to embrace those and to incorporate them into what we do.
We'll go to Kirk and then we'll come back to this room.
Kirk, unmute, there we go.
Hi, Nancy. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you? Nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, you too. First, it's obvious, but I want to thank you for your decades of leadership at the school and your vision and your steadfastness. I know all these changes are just a subset of what you did for the college, and I know it wasn't easy, so I just wanted to say that first.
Thanks.
So you've always been visionary, and you thought of outside the box on the academic and programmatic and even political part of your leadership. I wondered if this is an appropriate forum to just discuss for a second some of the economic realities and drivers of higher ed, because I know in the council, there were some practical considerations about some of these reorganizations to really keep the relevance and viability of an environmental and a marine program at the University of Delaware. So if it's an appropriate forum, I think that would be an interesting couple of minutes to share.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk. I think that is, we were in the midst of responsibility-based budgeting, another post-traumatic stress thing for everybody, everybody on the faculty here. So responsibility-based budgeting was a reimagining of how we budgeted here at the University of Delaware. And colleges that had lots of students fared very well. Colleges who were very research intensive did not. And the research intensive colleges, and it turns out it was engineering, it was us, and maybe health sciences, were given large subventions. Well, subvention means they're just pouring a bunch of money, they're giving you money, they're pulling money from somewhere else and they're giving it to you. And so it was not a very, in my mind, it was not a very stable model to be operating on. That I felt you needed a diverse portfolio of funding. And so you needed student tuition streams, you needed research funding, you needed a variety of things to be successful moving forward. And I think that the smaller footprint that CMS had, I thought in the long term, given the fact that you had two campuses, there was all the infrastructure associated with that. And in fact, when you bring all of us together into CEOE, you also have a lot of infrastructure. So it just so happens that the sciences and the work that is done across environmental disciplines in particular, it's just dollar intensive. And so you have to try to think about ways to diversify that portfolio. And some of that is partnering with industry to help figure out and solutions to not us telling them or them telling us, but us partnering together to doing some of the things, partnering with the state to solve problems where you're truly going into this as partners. And I think that when that happens, then you sort of get the funding is kind of going to what, there's a two-way street there that will make you more viable. Does that get to what you were thinking about, Kirk?
Yeah, that's perfect. I always think it's important, particularly for students in an academic program, to hear the fiscal realities of higher education so they can appreciate sort of what it takes to keep their programs viable and fun.
One other comment that I think I'll make is that I remember talking to a group of students and then those students who ultimately went on and out into the real world, right? And some of them went into academia and some of them went into the business sector. They were in industry, they were in biotech, they were in a variety of different sectors. And a number of them commented on the fact that their training broadly around environmental things help them to think across disciplines and to think when they came in to address problems, help them to be an aggregator in terms of pulling things from different people and aggregating it up. So the kind of systems thinker that you increasingly need in the world that we have today. Yeah.
One or two more questions, comments? All right, sounds like you covered it all. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Amy said, nice picture.
Okay.
Kirk was sending you a clapping hands.